Good day, everyone. My name is Leah Mushet. I'm a reporter here at the Western Standard, and today I have with me Austin Thompson, a senior policy analyst for the Fraser Institute, who recently published an article on the irresponsible spending of municipalities in Canada. According to 2023 figures, Canada's municipalities are now spending more than 25% more taxpayer dollars per person annually than they did in 2000. With spending growth exceeding inflation, one has to ask, is this money being spent wisely, or are municipalities overspending? So, Andrew's going to help me answer some of these questions. And the first question I had was, is inflation, like the 25% increase, if municipal governments had matched inflation rates, would you believe this would be advisable?
Yeah, so let me just maybe clarify one of the findings of the study. So what my studies found is that local governments, and that's a category that includes municipal governments, but also school boards and Indigenous governments, increased their spending by 25% above and beyond inflation growth and population growth between 2000 and 2023. So what that means is that, in the year 2000, in inflation adjusted terms, local governments were spending $4,673 per person. And 23 years later, in 2023, they were spending $5,851 per person. So that's an increase of $1,178 for every Canadian resident. If they had instead increased spending only at the rate of inflation, that would have stayed constant throughout. So that $4,673 per person amount we saw in 2000 would have remained the same in 2023. And what we saw instead was a 25% increase.
Okay, that makes sense. Good to know. Well, then in that case, I was also wondering, so your findings, that's basically the average for the whole of Canada, right?
Yeah, so those figures there reflect local governments across the entire country. But you can drill in on the details. The data for municipalities in particular is only available in a shorter time frame. But if you look between 2008 and 2023, municipal spending grew faster than population growth and inflation in all 10 provinces. And so while the average figure is for a significant increase across the country, it reflects increases in every major province.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I guess then my next question would be if there has been this big increase and services hasn't seemed to improved in most of these municipalities, where do you think most of this money, this extra increase of spending is going?
Sure, of course. So my study was based on fairly high level data. So I didn't have access to spending in specific categories like local transport or parks and recreation. But what I did have were the major spending categories. And among these, the largest spending category by a significant margin is the compensation of employees. So the amount that local governments spend on wages for their employees and also benefits. So that's the largest spending category, and it's growing faster than inflation. But other spending categories are growing faster than inflation as well. So local governments spend money on goods and services. They buy buses and gas for the buses. They buy computer equipment for their employees. Those expenses are raising faster than inflation. And as well, municipalities make investments in infrastructure, new municipal buildings and roads. And there too, expenses are growing faster than inflation.
Okay. Okay, well, also then my next question would be the $170 billion in infrastructure you mentioned in your article. So this, like you said, it would probably be averaged out over the whole entire country, but you're talking about roads, just any infrastructure that the city, the maintenance it's piling up because they're spending it on other things, right? Because you said they argue this is why they need more money, but essentially, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. So Canadian municipalities, they get together and advocate for their interests through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, an organization. And that organization looked at a Statistics Canada study from 2020, which found that if you look at municipal infrastructure across the country, so that's water, wastewater, local transportation infrastructure, the things that are the responsibility of municipalities, they found that if you were to try to improve or replace the infrastructure that had been assessed as being in poor or very poor condition, it would require $170 billion of maintenance. And so the Federation of Canadian Municipalities takes that number and says, look, we have this large infrastructure deficit. We need more dollars from our taxpayers. We need more dollars from the provincial and federal governments in order to maintain and improve local infrastructure. And that's just not how I would frame that issue. What I found in my study is that local governments, and specifically municipalities, have increased their spending per person over time faster than the rate of inflation. And yet, even while they have had this increased spending, they have allowed an infrastructure deficit, a rather large one, to increase. And so I think it's incumbent upon Canadian taxpayers to first ask really difficult questions about City Hall. Why are you spending more per person, at a faster rate than the growth in inflation, and yet have allowed local infrastructure, one of your core responsibilities, to fall by the wayside? And that's something I think we ought to do before we, say, municipalities, yes, here's more of our tax dollars to fix this issue.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Well, to close it off, I have one more question that I wanted to ask you. Do you think it's even related to, I guess, what you just said on like the infrastructure and stuff like that? Do you think this should be something that Canadians and, for example, the Alberta elections, municipal elections are coming soon in October. Do you think this is something that Canadians should be looking at when they're choosing whoever they decide to choose?
Yeah, of course. So, I think a major function of what municipal governments do is they raise taxes from their residents. They receive grant payments from the provincial government, the federal government, and they spend that money on our behalf to deliver local services. And that's the core of what they do. And what matters to a taxpayer like myself and many others is whether or not we're getting good value for our dollars. We can really only make that assessment if we first understand how much our city's spending on our behalf and how has that changed over time. My study found that across the country, local and municipal governments are spending more per person, and that increase has outpaced the rate of inflation. To me, that's a good cause for concern and a reason to ask, has that spending increase resulted in better local services? And where it hasn't, it's something that voters may consider when they go to the ballot box.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess maybe I could ask you just one more question because I'm kind of curious, and you just tell me. Like for the grants and stuff, is it like a set amount that like the municipal governments get, like depending on like the province and stuff? Like, is that how that works, or do they request it? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so this differs by province. Different provinces assign different responsibilities to municipal governments. Some provinces have an additional layer of government, a regional government that spends on transit and other issues. But across the country, municipalities receive about 20% of their funding directly from provincial governments. And so it's a reason to be concerned about local government spending, even if you're happy with the spending in your local government. Because the reality is everyone who's paying city taxes is also paying provincial taxes. And if any city is spending in a way that isn't efficient or isn't aligned with priorities, then that falls on all of us as provincial taxpayers as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's all I got. So I thank you very much, Austin. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
that you joined us here today. Yeah, thank you. Well, all I have to say is if you enjoyed this content, we have more of it on our channel. So if you want to subscribe, you should. And yeah, hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye bye.